and all the concepts are called or addressed or referred to as psychoanalysis, because this is one analysis you keep coming back to back. You must have already heard more than 100 times. All the Freudian approach to counseling and psychotherapy, collectively it is referred to as psychoanalysis. So, as we all know, he's an Austrian neurologist, and he emphasizes the role of unconscious mind, childhood experiences, influence of sexuality, and aggression on human behavior. So, actually, he was dealing with hysteric patients, right? So, he, as a physician, he started, and yeah, and he was dealing, mostly with all these mentally ill patients or hysteric patients here. So after his, experience, what he proposed to us, like repression of some real or imagined events which are specifically traumatic. Okay, traumatic events in the unconscious mind that might have caused hysteric symptoms. That is one proposal from him. That's what he proposed. And another one is the nature of the symptoms was very much related to the events. That was another concept that he developed. And third one was, getting insight into the relationship between the events, that means the traumatic experiences or the events, and the symptoms now what they are showing can relieve the patients from the hysteric symptoms. That's what, he proposed. So, before entering, too deeper into that, unless and until we again read the theory of Freudian, I know you all must have, an understanding about Freudian theory, but I'll try to brief it. Freudian theory, as we all know that, it's the topical, the topographical model here. He explains the configuration of the mind, right? So which he describes the mental functioning. He describes the mental functioning in terms of three levels of consciousness: the conscious, pre or subconscious, and unconscious mind. And in fact, it's always compared by him to an iceberg, right? So the tip of the iceberg is the conscious mind, and it represents all the thoughts and emotions that we are aware of at the given moment. And right next to the iceberg is the preconscious mind, which includes all the stored memories, desires, thoughts, and feelings, which are currently not aware but can be brought into conscious awareness with some, effort. And the larger part of the iceberg under the water, that represents the unconscious mind. So, according to Freud, definitely, brain cannot directly be accessible to this awareness, which is at the unconscious level. So, all the, it contains all the unresolved traumas, conflicts, repressed memories, desires, fears, urges, ideas, painful emotions, shameful and fearful, distressing, all those, experiences which we are not able to consciously face are repressed and oppressed at the unconscious level, about which one is not aware of. That's what, Freudian concept is all about, of course, about the mind. So we are unaware of these feelings and thoughts, and but the thing is, they influence the behavior of human beings, and it can raise to many psychological symptoms and distress. Okay, so the mind, actually it operates with a lot of complex interplay between the conscious, preconscious, or subconscious levels, in fact. So here the psychoanalysis aims to relate to unconscious information. So an individual should be able to get the insight into the unconscious dynamics, so that one should be working to resolve the problems which are in that particular level, about which one is unaware of. Okay. Yeah. And another important thing is about the structure of the mind. Okay, structure of the mind. And yeah, one second, the screen is Yes. Yeah, someone has to mute there, please. Someone has to mute. Yes. Yeah, please don't disturb us. Just mute your audios and videos. Okay. I don't know why it is not. Ah, right. Can you see this?
Yes, ma'am.
So why it is not? I'm sorry, there is a small disturbance here. I don't know why. Okay, let it be this way. You can understand at least. Okay. So here, the structure of the mind is, it's like, he structures the mind into three aspects. Okay. He termed them as it, ego, and superego. It is, of course, it operates as a pleasure principle, superego as the moral principle, and ego as the reality principle. So if there is not aligned, if they are not aligned with each other, or if they should be always in alignment, then only there could be a kind of balanced state of mind. In case if there is not any alignment, that can result in internal conflicts or say psychological distress. So there is one more theory he comes up with, is the drive theory. So he proposes that human behavior is driven or motivated by two primary instincts, because his whole concept is on on instincts only. So here, these two instincts are eros and thanatos. That is, love and death. Generally in Greek, they are called love as eros and death as thanatos. So according to Freud, eros, which is known also known as sex drive, it's the life instinct, and it is central to the human nature, and it is always associated with the self-preservation, basically. Okay, and all forms of pleasure also. Whereas thanatos, it is referred to as the death instinct, and this provokes individual towards death, aggression, self-destruction, and understanding and analyzing these two instincts actually helps the counselors in getting insight into a person's motivational level, addressing underlying issues, providing some kind of validity to all that, promoting balance, integrating all these things will really help them to understand better and resolve the conflicts too. Another important thing he comes up is with the defense mechanisms, right? Now, defense mechanisms, actually what he proposes is individuals always use variety of defense, ego defense mechanisms to protect themselves. To protect themselves from what? To protect themselves from the anxiety or any kind of uncomfortable emotions here. So it's a kind of unconscious role that is played by the ego, that is actually very important in the normal development. Okay, so but in the ego defense mechanisms, there are ego defense mechanisms which involves denying the reality by distorting the thoughts or feelings or perceptual distortions. All that will also be there, which might result again into psychological problems. So here, what is the role of therapist means, therapist must help the client become aware of and understand their defense mechanisms, and what could be the impact of defense mechanism on their thoughts, emotions, and behavior. What kind of defense mechanisms that they are using often or frequently, and what would be the impact of those defense mechanisms on their thoughts, emotions, and behavior. For example, denial, refusing or avoiding the unpleasant or painful reality. For example, if someone is facing the chronic disease, if they keep denying the disease, then it will not help them, right? So accepting the reality is also very, very important. So in fact, Anna Freud, his daughter, so she expanded Freud's theory by adding 10 types of defense mechanisms. So these defense mechanisms, at least some of them you should be very well aware of. So one is, regression. So it is like, returning to earlier stage of development in response to a stressful situation. So what is this earlier stage? For example, someone is bedwetting during stressful situations these days, then why are they doing it? So whenever they are under stress, they are getting back to their childhood, probably then, they were into bedwetting. So they have regressed into their childhood. So somewhere, this needs to be again, made them aware of. Then denial is another defense mechanism. Okay, when there are situations, during which you cannot really help but to take a pause or to deny, it for a while. Okay. But always denying, probably it might not help. Okay, and there is one, defense mechanism, projection, like, attributing undesirable thoughts and feelings onto others. Like, spouse who is having an extramarital affair, they might project that their partner is actually, becoming violent or maybe, like abusing these days. Actually, the issue is with the spouse who is complaining it about. So projecting it onto someone else. And displacement is another defense mechanism, shifting the emotions from their original sources and showing it on less threatening targets. For example, instead of, yelling at the boss, they start yelling on children or spouse or family members. So this is called as displacement. So why these days, this man is yelling at the spouse or children? Why, a teacher comes to the class and yells at students? Because she's not able to actually relieve herself of all that, emotional trauma she underwent at her, home, and she's trying to relieve all that, on children. So it will definitely affect, the whole class culture, probably the self-esteem of the students as well. So it has, lot to be understood, I mean, in that. And rationalization is another defense mechanism. It involves, giving logical or reasonable explanations to justify irrational behaviors, like blaming the traffic for reaching late to attend the meeting. So always, you cannot blame the traffic, right? So it is, kind of logical explanation, but most of the time they become rational to justify their irrational behaviors. So that also happens. I mean, rationalization is not, there's nothing wrong with rationalization, but how often that particular defense mechanism that is used, that actually, we need to take into consideration. Repression is unconscious suppression of distressing feelings and situations, not remembering childhood traumas and all that. That is called as repression now. So how repressive they are of their childhood traumatic experiences, how, it is actually acting upon their present behavior, why it is leading to so many conflicts and complex behavior here. Now there is, the strong connection between all this, right? Sublimation is the healthiest, form of mechanism. So this involves channeling unacceptable impulses into socially acceptable behaviors. For example, anger issues. If a person is facing anger issues, they might get into a sport like, boxing. So where their anger gets relieved and probably they become more, kind of balanced or homeostatic, you can say that. Then reaction formation, this involves expressing feelings or beliefs that are opposite to their authentic selves actually, right? Excessively kind towards a person with whom they're actually angry at. So this is a kind of, reaction formation. Actually, you are angry at that person, but you become, over friendly with that person. So that is kind of, reaction formation. Why this particular person is into so much with, I mean, in an opposite behavior, like, this is nothing but a defense mechanism. So now you must have understood, how important it is to understand the defense mechanisms, because they always, result, kind of in development of psychological problems too. And Freud actually, he developed psychosexual stages also. The stages are like oral stage. Then they provide, what is the importance of these psychosexual stages? oral stage, anal stage, phallic, latency, and genital. This is up till puberty. He talks about these. Birth to 1 year, 1 to 3 years is for anal stage, 3 to 6 is for phallic stage, latency 6 years up till puberty, and genital is puberty onwards. So what is the erogenous zone in that particular stage? For example, oral stage, it is the mouth is the erogenous. That means arousal zone, you can say that. So what are the consequences of unresolved conflicts or fixations? For example, someone is not drawing complete satisfaction during that particular stage can lead to a kind of fixation or conflict. For example, it can lead to a passive, personality, immature or manipulative personality, gullibility, etc., etc. So it is very important these stages, provide the counselor or the therapist with a kind of, framework. So, for understanding the influence of the childhood experiences, because Freudian concept actually a whole lot is to be understood from the childhood experiences, and hence these stages are to be studied in depth. In fact, okay, to understand the current psychological functioning of the client. Oh, because all the resolved conflicts, or they could be repressed or suppressed or fixated or kind of so unresolved, I would say, right, at these stages. So it is very important to explore clients' past attachments and relationship patterns, or the past experiences related to intimacy, etc., etc. So that give loads of information. So now Freudian approach to counseling and psychoanalysis here, the goals of the counseling process actually it may differ depending upon the needs of the client. Okay, but overall, this approach primarily focuses on bringing the unconscious desires, wishes, underlying causes to the conscious mind. Why this particular person is so anxious when he has to face a group? Why the person is not able to connect well with the spouse? Why the person is not able to deal with opposite sex, or not able to develop a relationship with the opposite sex? So I mean, these are kind of few examples for which probably their traumatic experiences or some kind of experience could be the reason about which they may not be aware, or they may be aware but not completely conscious about. And another this approach primarily focuses on is reconstructing the basic problem in the personality, and assisting and supporting the clients in reliving their earlier experiences, and to achieve intellectual and emotional awareness also. So these are the focusing primarily focused upon. Now, techniques. What are the techniques used? The most used techniques, at least one or two techniques are definitely used here for any counselor. That depend on these techniques, in fact. So these techniques, of course, here the first technique, the most key techniques I'm talking about is free association. So here, in fact, the fundamental rule of this particular approach is without any judgment, the client is to be encouraged to speak freely, to express whatever that comes to their mind. It could be, highly distressing to the counselor as well as, client also. It could be sometimes irrational or irrelevant actually. But then this particular technique really helps to access to the unconscious material. Okay, so that's exactly how we can reach to those unconscious material when they associate themselves very freely with the counselor. So all these, through that free association or free talk, only their thoughts, memories, and emotions, they are going to emerge out spontaneously. Now, next technique is dream analysis. So dreams can be actually, can be seen as gateways to unconscious memories, right? So here the clients, they generally share their dreams with the therapist, through symbols, sometimes, imagery. So there could be a lot of hidden meaning, behind the dreams. So here the therapists generally, provide them with some kind of significant insights about their unconscious conflicts and desires. So they speak about unconscious conflicts and desires, and the therapist is to bring out or provide some kind of insight into them. Next is interpretation. So the client's words or slips of tongue, dreams, behaviors, or these are to be analyzed by the counselor or the therapist, so that they can uncover whatever that is at unconscious level. The meanings and the conflicts, they come out through their body language, probably their behavior, their slips of tongue or dreams. So here they have to interpret all these aspects, provide insight to the client about their experiences, their thoughts and emotions, or any inconsistencies that they must have faced even currently that they are facing. And analysis of resistance also, this is another technique. So what are the techniques? Free association, dream analysis, interpretation, analysis of resistance. Now what is analysis of resistance? Here the client might unconsciously attempt to avoid or stop the therapeutic process. So here, by paying attention to and analyzing their resistance, the therapist must identify that this is the clue. In fact, he has to take the clue about their underlying conflict, about why the person is resisting to come out at this stage. So this gives the clue to the therapist that all the conflicts, underlying conflicts, could be because of this experience. So here, somewhere or the other, they need to further explore that particular area, so that the client can be helped. So here, the client and the therapist relationship is, it's like supporting the client. The counselor or the therapist must support the client. In fact, this is a fundamental aspect. Okay. So the relationship between the client and counselor is the most important. Why? Because this is I said this is the foundation or the fundamental aspect here, because it is all about exploration. It's all about understanding the client's mind. So unless and until the client feels safe and secure, right? And unless the client feels that the therapist is trustworthy, they won't actually come out with their thoughts and emotions, including irrelevant, including, irrational, distressing, everything they have to come out, right? So the therapist has to provide a very safe environment, so that they should be able to visit and revisit those unresolved traumas, and so that the therapist is expected to maintain, trust and confidentiality. Okay. And what exactly the counselor is to maintain here? Yes, non-judgmental attitude. And always, active listening, paying attention to the client's emotions, and always being empathetic towards the client, and understanding, and always giving validation that they are actively listening, as well as comprehending, understanding also, right? And there are, two phenomena which can come
Sorry.
during the process, therapeutic process here. That's what Freud's, proposes. One is,
Mom,
transference and counter transference. Okay.
excuse me.
Yes.
Analysis of resistance. Client is resisting himself, right? He's
Yes.
in, he's resisting himself to, like, is unable to express his views, or he
Yeah.
did not understand this little bit.
Yes.
Analysis of
Now,
resistance.
see, during the free association, they are allowed to, express freely, right? So there are, certain areas, probably, they resist to open up. Okay.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
therapist has to, identify that as a clue, right? There is
Yes.
some kind
Okay.
of, underlying conflict, and the areas, that these are the areas which are to be explored. So they
Okay.
stop there, or they might, kind of deviate from that, like topic or area, or, period, or something like that. Okay. This is what
Okay.
is analysis of resistance. Very useful technique, actually. And here,
Okay.
the two important phenomena is about transference and counter transference. Very important. So this might occur within the therapeutic relationship actually. So here, it can be, both like, positive as well as negative. That means, positive transference occurs, when the client unconsciously transfers their feelings, attitudes, and expectations from the past relationships onto the therapist. For example, if they had a very negative experience, traumatic experience from their father, then probably, unconsciously that they might transfer all those, negative feelings towards the therapist. Okay. So sometimes it could be affectionate also. They might start, kind of being very possessive about the therapist, if they have. So it could be positive as well as negative. So it only reflects, kind of deep patterning of the old experiences in relationships, because as they're emerging in the current life, the same is, getting transferred onto the therapist. Whereas counter transference, that refers to the therapist, emotional reactions and responses to the client based on the therapist, experiences. Now, this is again, very confusing. But yeah, it's the therapist, ability to gain self-understanding. This is what I have been telling you people for the past, 3 or 4 days, how alert and active and aware the therapist should be. So they have to gain self understanding, and they have to establish appropriate boundaries with the clients, right? It is very, very important to manage and effectively use their, cognitive, counter transference reactions, because you need to know your boundary there. So otherwise, forcefully, they are going to impose their feelings, their thoughts, their values onto the client here. So boundaries, limitations, self-understanding about their strengths and limitations, right? About their values, all this is very important for the therapist, first of all. And when are they supposed to terminate here again? And once the client gains, insight, say, resolve the conflicts, achieve their goals, counseling process can be concluded, in fact, right? So they can always, both of them together, they can always, review the progress, they can reflect on the work that is done, and they can always discuss the strategies for further, maintenance of the progress and all that, and then they can call off the counseling setting. And
Which
next
means
is, yes.
counter transparency, where the counselor, he has to be like, biased thing. Neither he has to give
Yeah, they can
positive.
be biased, or they can be, kind of, no, you should have, done this way, it is very wrong. I mean, all the values that they,
Mhm.
carry, sometimes, they might, all these can reflect on to the client. That is very important. Actually, it happens. The line is very thin. That's what we need to understand.
But ma'am, like,
Non-judgmental and unconditional. See, it's like, this is what I wanted to tell all of you. These are the concepts, you need to first of all understand and read for, more than twice or thrice or 4 times. I don't mind, you read 40 times also. Okay. But try to understand the concept, and, go through whatever, book that you have in hand, go through it. And even while you are learning the other papers also, equally committed and dedicated to the other papers also, then, try to integrate all this. Okay. You need not be under any kind of, confusion, because this is the first time you have started thinking like a counseling, psychology student. I appreciate that. Okay. So you will understand. And I really appreciate, at least, few students are coming up with doubts here. Yeah, any other doubt regarding Freudians?
ma'am, one more.
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
please.
See, like, if I being you being a counselor, I being a like client of
Who is
you,
this? Who
then
is this?
if I express my feelings to you and you show
Who
give
is this student? May I know? What's your name? Please introduce yourself.
This is Sarita, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, Sarita.
Uh, Actually, if I'm telling all my O's to you, when I'm explaining my all O's to you, if I find any nothing expression in your face, then I may not open up completely. So that could be an adverse effect to the client.
See, you
And
have
he
yet to
should
start
not
your
give.
skills and techniques, ma. You have yet to start. You have to yet to start that class. Yes. So this is just the beginning. First, try to understand the concepts and theories, Sarita. Okay. So it's in the process, how you are supposed to understand what are the stages. Again, there are like 5 stages in the process of counseling. Where exactly, what exactly to be used here, what is the skill to be used, all that you will get to understand when that class starts taking. Okay. First, you have to try to understand the theories. Based on theories only, all this, process has been developed.
Okay, okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what you're asking is about the skill here. What you're asking about, many other things here, right? Non-verbal, communication, verbal communication, their body language, how you're supposed to actually, observe your observation towards the client and client's observation, towards you. I mean, there are so many things. You have yet to,
Okay.
you're just the beginner, just the beginner. First,
And
try to understand the concept. I hope you understood, Sarita. Okay.
yes, ma'am, sorry.
Oh, no, no, there's nothing to feel sorry about. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So next is about, neo-Freudians and I mean, there are many neo-Freudians actually. They have followed or influenced by Freudian school psychoanalytic, ideas like Carl Jung, Adler, Honey, Eric Erikson. But uh, this, chapter actually focuses on two important neo-Freudian theories. One is Alfred Adler and Eric Erikson. Okay. Now, Eric Erikson is, Anna, that is, Freud's daughter's friend, actually, and not friend, student who contributed to, Anna has contributed to ego psychology. So Erikson, he had developed this theory of psychosocial development. So he expanded Freudian's psychosexual stages. And he actually, like focuses on the psychosocial development. Okay. And he goes beyond, childhood, or not up till puberty, but he actually covers the entire lifespan. And according to him, it's like, psychosocial growth takes place throughout the entire lifespan. That's what, he proposes. So, and what he believes in is the individual goes through a series of stages throughout the lifespan, and each stage is characterized by certain specific psychosocial challenges, which he calls as crisis. Okay, at each stage there is a crisis, there are certain challenges, and resolving these crises or challenges at each level or at each stage actually gives, an individual healthy development, as well as it helps them to gain a healthy sense of identity also. In case if they fail to do so, say, it can lead to some kind of developmental crisis. So, in fact, Freud stage, as I already told you, it's not completed in just, up till adolescent. It is going to remain throughout the, lifespan. So, challenges and crisis periods could be there, throughout the lifespan, according to Erikson. And each stage is to be progressed, and one particular, 8 stages he talks about, Eric Erikson. Okay. And progress in definitely each stage is partly determined by the success or lack of success in the previous stage. For example, if they have some kind of identity confusion, say in the third or fourth stage, it is going to have its detrimental effect on the next stage too, right? If someone has developed, mistrust in the very first stage, it is going to have its impact in the next, few other stages. That's exactly what he proposes. So where can it be applied application here? Let me share the screen. Okay. So application of Erickson's theory in counseling. In fact, when you are applying, when you're following Erickson's theory, say, it always, aids to or enhances clients' overall well-being, right? It is all about resolving conflicts, or it is always to strengthen the sense of identity, because identity is the central point or the most important aspect needed for the individual. Okay, so understanding Erickson's psychosocial theory, actually it helps the counselor to explore their unresolved conflicts. Okay, a client's unresolved conflicts. And of course, when you're understanding their unresolved conflict at any stage, say for example, that is going to again lead to their current well-being, right? So the therapist has to work on resolving these conflicts by reflecting on these conflicts, for example, right? It could be anything, some, unresolved conflict with the parents, say, at the early stage, or some kind of unresolved conflict which led to some kind of identity diffusion at adolescent stage, right? So what are their strengths and limitations? They have just no idea about, and which is leading them into conflict. And at that if that particular, unresolved conflict is resolved through reflection, then probably it might lead to some kind of healing to the person. And from there, the growth starts, personal growth starts. And that is always, towards well-being. We all know that. And Erickson, again, what he emphasizes is about, identity formation, especially during adolescence. So here, a counselor must help the individuals to understand their conflicts, about their roles, their identities here, right? This will only give them the authentic identity. Who am I? What am I actually here for? What is the purpose? What are my strengths? What are my limitations? What am I good at? Who am I? It's all about that only, right? So that authentic identity, which gives them a sense of, self, right? That's exactly what Erickson emphasizes. And another, kind of application is, especially while they're going through the major transition in life, say, for example, adolescence to adulthood, parenthood, retirement. So counselors must benefit the client by addressing the psychosocial challenges one could be facing. Okay, so there are, like adjustment problems. There are challenges when you are, the transition from when a person is taking transition from, say, adolescent to adulthood, or young adulthood to middle adulthood. So now they're slowly, settling down in the job. Now children are growing. They're supposed to, confine themselves to a parental, role very strongly, and they have to think about the stability in not only their life as well as their children's life. So suddenly their roles have become, multiplied. At the same time, their responsibility has increased towards their children, wife and children or family. So there are certain psychosocial challenges at that time as well. So these challenges are to be addressed to the client, so that they can actually equip themselves to face the challenges in a healthy manner. Okay, so counselors, actually help the client to face the issues with regard to relationships also, because a person's, sense of identity, say, trust, or their intimacy with their family, or their generativity on their relationship, how much they are actually investing in the relationships, what is their identity with regard to their own self, right? What is their trust, their level of trust in other people. So all this will impact on their, relationships, making or fulfilling relationships, right? So that also can be helped by the counselor, because through counselor's eyes, probably client will be able to understand what exactly their, loopholes are, so that they can be benefited, like how I must be, investing to relate to myself, relate to other people in a healthy manner. And what are the 8 stages he talks about? Erickson's, trust versus mistrust. This is, during infancy, of course, right? And this is the basic trust that can be given by the mother and caregiver. And the basic needs are like food, care, comfort. So through this only the infant develops trust and hope. So in case if mother or the caregiver is failing to provide care and comfort to the or food, the basic needs, to the infant, probably infant might, develop something called mistrust. Okay. So later, this mistrust is going to expand towards the world, and which is going to again, force them to have very poor interpersonal relationships. That's why, it's very important to give as much care, comfort to the just born to, the first 6 days also they're able to understand, they're able to, feel what is what is care, what is, warmth, what is actually comfort. So that infant should be provided with all these. Otherwise, I told you what it can lead to, right? So next stage is during early childhood, that is autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is, developing bladder, bowel control, motor abilities. So these are the main tasks of this stage, right? So it is like, the parents are supposed to encourage the child to be more independent. So without, being too critical about or criticizing when they are actually trying to initiate things. So the caregivers can promote, dependency or being that means, always, be dependent on someone, or being too critical or being too much, that all creates a kind of self doubt. Okay. Or probably they become very reluctant to attempt any kind of challenge. So it is like they are actually entering into something called shame and doubting their own self. Okay. So dealing with, lot of patience is important from the parents side. Lot of encouragement is to be given. That is going to provide them with a lot of freedom and autonomy. And third stage is preschool stage. This is initiative versus guilt. Now, same thing, here, I mean, what if the child is coming with a kind of freedom, they're definitely going to take the initiative into the next at preschool age. If the child already has developed some kind of shame and doubt here, and failures at this preschool age is going to put them into a guilt or say some kind of withdrawal tendency. I think you can understand how the previous stages success or lack of success, it's going to impact the next stage. That's what I mean to say. Next important stage is at the school age, that is industry versus inferiority. And this is the most critical stage because this is when, they are going to develop self-confidence. So here the child is expected to learn cognitive skills, right? Learning things, attention, all these, memory and kind of recall recognitions and many things, motor as well as, cognitive skills. So they are going to expand their understanding towards their own, gender role identity also, right? No boy or a girl, here. So that will provide them with a kind of, setting and attaining personal and social goals that gives them a sense of identity here. So lot of, rewarding and promoting of their success, small success, small accomplishments. In fact, that will provide them with lot of, good sense of identity. Otherwise, and good, healthy self-esteem also. Otherwise, they might again completely, enter into a kind of sense of inadequacy or low self-esteem, because lot of humiliation, no, నీకేం చాతగనవ్వట్లేదు, నీకేం రాదు, నువ్వేం చెయ్యలేవు, kind of, these kind of humiliations and ridiculing or punishing them, especially at school level, or parents, all that, that might lead them to kind of inferiority complex at this stage. So probably they might learn through their failures, right? So here freedom plus taking initiative towards challenges, and then, enter into an industrious stage where they start, with small accomplishments, small, achievements for which they should be rewarded, and probably that gives them, a lot of healthy self esteem and confidence, right? So this is exactly how it is to be related. So now where the conflict lies when a client comes, this is what you need to understand and resolve. Okay. Next is, during adolescence, this is another important stage, as we all know. And here, naturally, if they have developed, kind of healthy self-esteem, they will naturally will be able to understand, because they are already aware of themselves to a good extent. So they will be able to identify themselves with, right? They know what is the purpose of their, at least, life, their goals, their objectives. So they will be able to transition takes place from childhood to adulthood during adolescence only, right? So they should be capable of accomplishing many things actually, right? So it's not like childhood. In fact, they're expected to accomplish many things, during this particular stage. So naturally, if they have any major conflicts, say in the previous stages, and it will naturally, push them into a kind of confusion, identity confusion. If they are able to understand and manage the conflicts, successfully, naturally that gives them with a sense of identity. They will be able to discover themselves, and they have a very clear vision about, what is my role with regard to my studies, my academics, my family, in my life, what I should be achieving, what am I good at, etc., etc. Right. Next is, young adulthood, again, intimacy versus isolation. So here, the major developmental task is to actually come up with a social network, cooperative, social relationship, work relationship. And definitely, this young adulthood is for more of intimate relationship with the family, spouse, and all that. So this kind of deep understanding, deep connections, intimate relationships, it should be only possible when they have their roles very clearly, written for themselves, right? Who have already scripted their life to an extent. They will be able to form these intimate relationships, and they will be able to handle, authentically with a lot of responsibility. Then only their relationships are going to maintain that kind of stability, and there would be a kind of positive outcome as well. Otherwise, a person might feel very isolated because they are failing at developing relationships only. And they might be having all this fear of rejection because already they are under fear of, failure or inferiority complex, or they are not feeling very good about themselves because of low self-esteem. So they avoid, intimacy, they avoid commitment, they avoid dedication. So they are into isolation. Okay. Next is, middle adulthood, generativity versus stagnation. So here, this is a stage where it's time for them to contribute something to the society, right? It is the time to guide the future generation that could be beyond self, family members or the society at this stage. So here, if the person who has already, able to maintain responsibility, commit themselves to the responsibility, commit themselves authentically to the family or to one's own self as well, right? So they will always, work towards betterment of family, betterment of work, betterment of, society. So there is, a lot of generativity and productivity, but you can understand failure of this can lead to a kind of stagnation, because అక్కడ పెరగడానికి ఏమీ ఉండదు, డెవలప్ కావడానికి ఏమీ ఉండదు, because they are already into a kind of isolation, right? So they will be, I mean, it's a challenging stage. I'm not saying, failure in the previous stage is always, going to be detrimental to the next stage. It will definitely have its impact though. But at some stage, person can become again, successful if a right kind of, help or, helping hand or support, if they get, they will be able to successfully complete that particular stage and enter into another stage. So it's not that, they are going to be failure at every stage, but here, at somewhere they have to clear all these conflicts. They have to, again face the challenges and complexities and maintain, kind of very, kind of, smooth sail of, stage by stage. Then there can be, some kind of integrity. So the last stage is, later in life, of course, integrity versus despair. So after reaching this particular stage, say at 60, right? So if they have feeling of, say, sense of accomplishment. Okay, they might have, certain success and accomplishments with few failures as well, because you cannot be uh, successful at every stage, or at every, nook and corner, right, at your life. So but still, back in life, when you look back into your life, person should feel, okay, fine, I am a worthwhile person. And they reflect on their life with a lot of wisdom, with a lot of, kind of acceptance. So that is what is, ego integrity. Say, if a person, when they look back into their life and say that, I couldn't achieve anything, my life has been, kind of a waste, in fact, with the feeling of despair and all that. So definitely, that leads to a lot of, remorse in life, kind of regretting life, or feelings of despair towards their life. So this is what, Erickson says. And these are, kind of beautifully set stages, psychosocial, because unless and until a person, there is some kind of social development, complete personality cannot be, developed or built. That's what Erickson's concept is all about. So this is about, Eric Erickson. By now, you must have understood, when I was talking about the applications here. So that's the reason why, unresolved conflicts at any stage for that matter, it impacts the current well-being of the person. So they should be helped to work on these conflicts at any stage, say for that matter, so that, through what kind of, tactics or techniques are to be used, reflection, self-reflection. Okay. And of course, this reflection is possible only through the therapist here, the counselor. Okay. So understanding of the conflicts, their role, confusions, role diffusions, ego, kind of identity diffusions here, all are to be understood and, kind of resolved here. Conflicts related to that must be resolved. Okay. Any doubts here? Yes. So yeah, so today we could complete, two important theories, Freudians, as well as, one of the neo-Freudians, that is Eric Erikson, and tomorrow I'll be completing Adler and, yeah, behavioristic school as well. So we can enter into the next block, yeah, recent approaches. So thank you. I think you have no doubts, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So
Thank
thank
you.
you. Yeah. So see you in the next class. Bye.
Thank you.
Madam, excuse me. Can you
Yes.
can you suggest a good book,
That you
please?
can just,
Please.
refer to the management, I mean, the course in charge, right? Yeah, some books with regard to counseling. Yeah, definitely. I will suggest you tomorrow. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
And ma'am, you are moving a little speed, ma'am. If you don't mind, can you please reduce the speed? Oh, she left.